Yo, hey guys, Homeskillet here, back with another build guide for Path of Exile. This is going to be for our Guardian crit or non-crit CI Divine Ire character we've been playing in the Legion League. We're currently at level 95, and yeah, I can definitely recommend this character for a whole lot of reasons. We basically wanted to make a tanky caster. It's kind of the types of characters we like playing. So you'll kind of see that reflected in this build. We value a lot of defense, and that makes us really good for killing some bosses and pushing delve, and it's still like a decent mapper at the same time. It's no like amazing Legion League farmer, but hopefully this will be like a build that can last outside Legion League. If there's some mechanic that calls for a really tanky caster character, or you just prefer to play tanky casters like myself, then this might be the build for you. But touching on it some more, you can definitely play this character as a crit based or as a non-crit based. It's relatively cheap, at least in this current league. We'll see how prices adjust as the meta changes, but ideally this will remain cheap, at least the initial setup, and you can probably take the skeleton of this build, use it for a lot of other classes or just the Guardian class, and kind of tailor it towards any spellcaster really. And you don't have to use Divine Ire, it's just what we've been having success with, is what we've been having a lot of fun with. So let's get into the build guide. So to start off this character, there's a lot of ways to build it, but we'll talk about kind of some of the synergies, and then we'll talk about different options you can take to kind of achieve that synergy and what you kind of need to be looking for in gear and itemization and things on the tree, and how all that works together to create the character we have here. So first thing we need to look at is probably just the Ascendancy itself, the Guardian. There's a couple things that work here. We are using Radiant Faith, so grant energy shield, a flat amount of energy shield equal to 15% of your reserve mana to you and nearby allies. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that we want to reserve our mana, and we want to scale our mana so we can get more energy shield. The more we reserve, the more energy shield we get, and from there we can scale it even further with percentage. We're also using Harmony of Purpose just to get power charges, frenzy charges, and endurance charges. When we hit, we don't have to kill, which is very nice. We don't have to be hit, it's just when we hit things. Divine Ire is a skill that hits very quick, very often, so we can keep up charges pretty much all the time with this. Next we have Time of Need. Time of Need just reduces the effect of curses on you, and every 5 seconds you remove curses and elemental ailments from you, and then also every 5 seconds you get 30% max life regenerated over 1 second. This is life, it doesn't apply to energy shield, but we'll talk about how we use that to our advantage with Keystones a little later. But basically every 5 seconds you have this 1 second of 30% regen, so if you divide that out, it's essentially 6% regen all the time. It's pretty nice. It's not technically 6% regen because you could get hit, and during that 4 seconds you can get hit again and die, and you would never have your 30% regen active, so it doesn't really count as 6%, but for the most part you can just evaluate it as 6%. Also, the reduced effect of curses is really nice. You don't really feel temp chains as hard, you don't feel elemental weakness as hard, so you can not have to stack as much resist and actually be curse capped or LE weakness capped. Lastly, we have Bastion of Hope. This gives us 50% block chance for 2 seconds every 5 seconds, so it just randomly happens. We're not really picking this for that, but it is nice. It also has, if you've blocked in the past 10 seconds, you and nearby allies cannot be stunned. So as a CI character, which we are going CI, you need some way to avoid stuns and being stun locked, so this is our way. We basically get stunned one every 10 seconds, and that's enough to survive basically anything. We won't ever get stun locked and all of that. We also have, if we used the skill recently, we get 10% chance to block a spell. If we use an attack recently, we have 10% chance to block an attack. Alright, so basically the theme so far is we're stacking mana. Mana gives us energy shield. We're stacking block. We have frenzy charges, and we have some regen. So we'll just talk more about the tree real quick because it's kind of important before we get into gearing. We're taking Zealot's Oath, so this 30% life regeneration over 1 second is going to be applied to energy shield instead. We also pick up a little bit of regen on the tree. We are also picking up Chaos Inoculation, so our maximum life becomes 1, but we are immune to chaos damage. So we're just looking for this energy shield to protect our 1 life at all times. And we're also using Ghost Reaver, so when we pick up Leech, it's going to apply for energy shield instead of life. Lastly, this is one you need a Timeless Jewel for. Normally it is Minion Instability or Avatar Fire. You can pick either one because of the radius, but this is the socket we use. So this is a Lethal Pride Timeless Jewel. It is a lava one, and the passives are conquered by the Karui. That's all you really have to know. Your results may vary, but pretty much what this does is it gives us the Glancing Blow passive, which gives us chance to block attack damage is doubled, chance to block spell damage is doubled, and you take 50% of damage from block hits. So it's really easy for us to get higher block, but we always take half of the block, so we'll just keep that in mind. It also changes the other passive, so we get like some random strength on all these tiny nodes. The medium-sized nodes are kind of the more interesting ones. They give you like different effects. So this one here has 4% increased max life, which does nothing for us. We could try to find some other jewels to get some different ones. The strength and the passive is good enough. Everything else is kind of just extra. This one just happened to give us life regen, which is nice. And if we picked up the Dex node, we would have the 5% chance to deal double damage. There's a lot of different variations on these, so you can kind of mix and match if you want. I don't think it's a huge deal. Definitely don't not play this build if you can't get one that gives you 1% chance to regen life, or this is 10% increased effective fortify, 20% increased physical damage. I mean, there's all different types of mods, and if you want to really min-max the character, keep buying these jewels, see what kind of extra stuff you can get, and yeah, mess around with it. Let's talk about the gear before we talk about the rest of the tree. There's lots of different ways you can play this character. Like we said before, you can do a crit or non-crit variant. But let's talk about some of the synergies. So we're already reserving life, we're already reserving mana, and this mana gives us energy shield. So that's kind of how this is going to work. We're going to scale up mana with our tree, with our gear, all of that. But also on top of that, we're going to use Memory Vault. This has a line of text on here that says gain armor equal to your reserved mana. It also increases our mana reserved, which just means more energy shield. It also means more armor. And the rest of the stats on here are just really nice for what we're doing. We're getting armor, we're getting energy shield, we're getting mana. Perfect. As you can see, our armor is up to 18k, just chilling. We also use a Rumi's Concoction, so we get even more armor when we pop it to 24k. So things that matter with the armor, we're also using a Aegis Aura Champion Kite Shield. This gives us even more armor and energy shield. This also gives us more block, some resist, and it has the line of text where it replenishes energy shield by 2% of armor when you block. So 2% of this 18 or 24 is going to be given back to our energy shield. So we're basically reserving mana to give us energy shield, but it also gives us armor, and now when we block, based on our armor, we get energy shield back. And we are scaling up our blocks, so we have a lot of blocking, and as we take damage from these blocks, we're gaining health back. So pretty nice, and we're immune to chaos damage. So one thing that's usually weak about any block build is damage over time is kind of magnified. So not being able to be poisoned and protected by this whole thing is very nice, not having to worry about chaos damage at all. Then you only have to worry about cold damage over time, maybe some ignites, stuff like that. Since we're using a armor and energy shield, we are also using Cerebralist Limb. This just gives us good spell damage, cast speed, but it also gives us Leech if our shield has 30% chance to block, which it does. Aegis always has 32, so very nice there. It also gives us maximum energy shield per 5 armor, so this makes this shield around a 400 energy shield, which is just very nice, really hard to replace, and these are relatively cheap to come by. To add more to it, another item you really need is going to be Shaper's Touch. This gives us mana per 4 strength. As we said before, mana equals energy shield, mana equals armor, armor equals survivability with the Aegis Aura. It all just works together really well. Also, the strength gives us 2% energy shield percent per, and intellect gives us evasion. So two very nice things just to get some evasion. We just have random evasion just from the intellect. We're up to 3k. You could run some different Flask if you want to really scale your evasion up even more, because we should have a pretty good amount of percentage evasion. We just don't have a lot of flat evasion on our current gear. But as you see our attributes, we're getting a lot of benefits from the strength and this intellect. Moving on, required pieces, I would say Incandescent Heart is basically required. It gives us attack damage as life, which doesn't matter for us, but it also gives us 18% of elemental damage as extra chaos. The higher the better. This rolls from 10 to 20, so you really want to be on that 20 side because that's just a lot of extra damage. It also makes your light radius based off of energy shield, which isn't a big deal because it's currently, it would either be based off of life or energy shield, but I'm always at full life, so it doesn't really matter. The really important thing is 25% of elemental damage from hits taken as chaos damage. Since we're chaos inoculation, we have 100% chaos resist, which means that 25% elemental damage just disappears. So if you have 75 percent resist and you're taking 25% less, it's equivalent to having +5 max res. So that's like +5 max res for all 3 elements. And then we're also using Akase Aura to give us another +5 cold res. We're using Taste of Hate to give you even more reduced damage from cold. So it's just really nice if you're trying to delve deep, if you're trying to do Shaper or Elder or Uber Elder, all that kind of stuff does a lot of cold damage. Let's talk about jewels as well, and just like the tree. So the tree, you know, we come out for the Templar, we are basically just grabbing damage, attributes, attack and cast speed, and armor, energy shield percentage, life regen where we can. Also, you know, LE damage, spell damage, resist, all of that is just really nice for us. Even physical damage, as you see here. So we're going around, we're grabbing mana, energy shield. This new cluster is really nice for us. Attributes, damage, crit, regen. This is like everything we want: armor, energy shield, res, you know, everything. As far as gems, you know, spell damage, max mana works, increased energy shield also works. Like we said, attack and cast speed, attributes, cold, lightning resist, you know, all the resists are nice. What else? Oh, we're using a healthy mind here and here. Forgot to mention that earlier, but basically we're taking these life nodes and just converting them to mana nodes. So as you see, this is the increased 10% mana node. This is a 20% increased mana node. And then here we have 18%, 28%, and 18%. So just huge amounts of mana, which is how we're scaling this up so high. Also, this one is being used here. So we have energy shield and mana node, basically made them similar clusters to over here. You could drop this and just pick up other nodes, like there's some mana node here. There's some mana nodes coming off here if you want to take that instead. You can actually go down to this jewel socket, taking these mana nodes if you want to go that route. There's a lot of different ways to play this character. You kind of just have to feel out what you feel like you're weak at, or what you kind of want to specialize in. There's also more increased area of effect. You want to take that. There's a lot of good nodes to go after for this build. If we had more points, we'd pick up like literally everything on the tree. Next up, let's talk about just some of the rares and other items. We use a Tactician belt. This just gives us high strength, high intellect. The global physical damage actually counts for our skill because Divine Ire has a physical component to it, and it will add to that physical component, and then it all gets converted to lightning. So it doesn't really double dip, but it still scales even though we only do lightning damage and we don't actually do any physical damage. Very nice. Also increased flash charges gained, so we can just spam our flask all the time. Even these unique flask, we'll have them up forever. It also gives us 21 to all resist because we meet the strength requirement. We also have the critical strike requirement as well. This one has a corruption here for extra critical strike. It's a pretty cheap belt, so it's easy to get some corruptions on it, so that's very nice. Talking about rares, for the crit version, we're using a Shaper ring with cursed enemies with Assassin's Mark on hit. This just gives us, you know, higher chance to crit. It really helps our effective crit chance. Other than that, you're really just looking for intellect if you can get it. Mana, as we've talked before, just gets converted to energy shield and armor. So we're basically prioritizing mana over just flat armor. We're prioritizing it over just flat energy shield because it kind of double dips with everything in our build. This one also has spell damage, so it's just really nice. And then we crafted some max life and max mana. You just have to craft the max life, but the max mana gives you the armor and energy shield we're talking about. Our other ring, just to kind of see, It's basically just attributes, some energy shield if you can find it. Flat mana is very nice. Usually the mana will scale better than the flat energy shield. And like we said before, it gives you the armor and everything else. So these are kind of rings you're looking for. Amulet, kind of same deal, just attributes everywhere. Attributes gives us so much with the Shaper's Touch, and it all just kind of working together. Lastly is our boots. You don't have to have boots like this. I crafted these myself, just looking for a flat energy shield roll, and then we augged into a resist, and then we regaled into another resist. We were just looking for one resist, but it just kind of worked out. And then we multi-crafted cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen, or the 80% chance to avoid frozen, which is enough because we also pick up this node here that is another 20% chance to avoid elemental ailments, so we have a 100% chance not to be frozen. If you don't want to multi-mod boots, you can just find some rare boots with these same stats. You just won't be able to get the cannot be chilled, but you'd have 30% movement speed instead, which would be pretty nice, and you can just craft the 80% chance to avoid being frozen. Very cheap craft. If you still can't do that, you can go a different route. You can get Rainbow Stride to have the extra chance to block spell damage. It also gives you energy shield, mana, all resist, everything. Very budget boot if you want to use that. But that makes it to where you can be frozen, so then you have to swap out one of your rings for like a Dream Fragment, which we were using pretty early on, and then we switched off of that. Alternate stuff for the belt as well. You can use Bated Breath early on. It's a high amount of energy shield. It just doesn't scale too well into the late game because you really need that strength. We really need that damage from the crit. We need everything that this gives us. This doesn't have any resist or crit or anything important like that. We're also using a rare belt at one point, just a lot of strength, armor, energy shield, and resist. You can do these kind of stepping stones until you can get your hands on the Tactician, or until your other gear is good enough that you can drop your belt. Other rings, this is just another one I pulled out for an example. You're not starved on dex, or you get dex in another spot, like you're using Syntrek with Dream Fragments, you'll have the 30 dex from here, and you can, I'd be able to drop this ring and run this one here that gives us strength instead of dex, and also has mana and just some resist. So that's pretty much it with the gear. Some other things to keep in mind is going to be a Watcher's Eye. If you're just going for damage, I would get the physical damage as extra lightning that we have here. If you're looking for a 2 property one, you want to get the max mana as energy shield while affected by clarity, and then also with the damage. But the damage is really important, I would say. So you can get one like this, that's just the damage. They're really cheap. Flask, Rumi's Concoction, as we said, it works well with everything. Gives us the attack block, gives us the spell block. As you can see, we're sitting here, we have 75% or 74% chance to block attack damage, 10% chance to block spell damage. If we use a skill, we go up to 30. If we use the flask, we go up to 50 and 75. Then we also have a Tempest Shield that will give us another 6. So we go up to 56 spell block, and we're way over the 75 for physical damage. So if you want to cap out and get even more spell block, you're going to have to run like Rainbow Strides. You're going to have to run a Watcher's Eye like this. If we could get a 3 property and maybe find a way to add in Discipline, we would definitely use that over this and just try to go full on spell block. Next up, we're using Anziri's Promise. It's just another way to get some leech. That's not super important, but it also scales our damage super hard because it gives us physical damage as extra, but it also gives us for our elemental. Since our skill is physical and then we convert it all, and it's also an elemental skill, then it just gives us a lot of damage. Same kind of goes with Taste of Hate. Taste of Hate also just gives us some other benefits as well, where we take less cold damage. So just very nice against Uber Elder, Delve, all that fun stuff. So this is kind of where the build goes, 2 different directions. We'll talk about the crit variant versus the non-crit variant. So if you're using the crit variant, you definitely need a Diamond Flask. You can use whatever removal you find necessary. We have immunity to shock because I think that's going to be our biggest killer. You could go Ignite if you want, could go Curses if that's like an issue for you. And then lastly, we use a Quicksilver Flask. I would use this for either build, but you could drop increased movement speed and just run a removal flask as well. We need to talk about the Pantheons real quick just to kind of show why we're not too worried about like shock or curse or anything like that. We already have the 25% chance to, or 25% reduced curse effectiveness. This here we have reduced elemental damage taken, we have the physical damage reduction, But the big thing here is the 50% chance to avoid ailments from critical strikes. So a lot of the time we'll be just avoiding the shocks. If you're playing hardcore, then you probably have to have the shock removal, I would say. And then you also take no extra damage from critical strikes if you've taken a crit recently. So basically it just means you can't be crit twice in 4 seconds, which is huge, really amazing, especially if you're delving and you're in like a crit area, just not being able to take 2 crits in quick succession. Very nice. Divine Ire is a skill where you stay stationary, so we get pretty good benefit out of this. So I would say Soul of Tukahama is probably the next best one, or at least the best one for the small. If we are doing Uber Elder or Shaper and you really don't want to have to worry about taking any damage, I'd go Soul of Urgal to have the reduced cold damage over time if you've been hit recently, or the reduced cold damage if you've been hit recently, and also taking this to have the 5% reduced damage taken from damage over time, and then you also have the increased rate of life and energy shield. So yeah, let's go over our gems. So there's a lot of different gem setups you could use. I'm just going to go over what I use, what I felt worked best, and we'll also talk about some options you could mess around with. So we have faster attacks, shield charge, fortify. I just like having fortify on this build. I also like using shield charge just to zoom around a little bit, pop in and out of fights. If you wanted to, you could just solely rely on flame dash, which we have over here. We have flame dash in our shield, along with the cast when damage taken plus molten shell. Since we have so much armor, 18k, and then when we pop our flask, we have the 24k. Just really helps juice up the molten shell. We also get more armor when molten shell activates, so we get very nice buffer to damage as we when we proc this. For our helm, we're using like a utility setup. We're using Orb of Storms with Arcane Surge. We have these set up to where when we cast Orb of Storms, we activate Arcane Surge. So it costs 27 mana. So when we activate it, we activate our level 6 Arcane Surge, which procs after 26 mana. We're also using Innervate just to shock targets. And we're also using Onslaught to just cast a little faster and all of that on bosses. You also could use Colon Strike if you wanted. If you want to just go that route instead of Onslaught, or switch them as you please. For our main links, we're using Divine Ire, Controlled Destruction, LE Focus, Physical to Lightning, Lightning Penetration, and Infused Channeling. These are the highest DPS gems for our setup. You could drop LE Focus and not use Innervate if you wanted, and put in like the Crit Multi gem if you want to do that. But I found this to be the best. I like the setup a lot. I would definitely recommend going this, but if you want to experiment, try out whatever. Then we have our auras here. We're using a Wrath aura with Clarity, Herald of Ash, and then we're using a Swift Affliction. The Swift Affliction, I mean, besides just making Herald of Ash go a little faster, it actually reserves more of our mana. So we're at 16, but 12.5k energy shield. So if we reserve our mana more, we get down to 178, but it gives us some more energy shield. So just you could mess around with any like gem setup here, or if you want to get like a reduced zealotry reservation, you could switch to zealotry instead. It gives you some nice crit, but you can't use this Watcher's Eye, so that's kind of up to you. Also, you could look and get the discipline mana reservation reduction, helm enchant, maybe grab these here, or these auras here, this aura reduction here as well. And you could run just like a different aura instead of the Swift Affliction, or you can run like an Enlighten, and maybe you can run Wrath and Zealotry. So you can mess around with that, but this is kind of like the easy budget version, Herald of Ash with just Swift Affliction, Clarity, and Wrath. Also for auras, we're using Precision. It only costs a flat amount, so it's really easy to squeeze into the build. We have 6.2k mana, so it's really easy to add this in. This gives us critical strike chance, which doesn't say spells or not spells, so you get it for everything. Just very nice to get our effective crit chance as high as possible. Then we're also using Wave of Conviction, Tempest Shield, and cast when damage taken. So the first time we take damage, we pretty much always activate Tempest Shield, and then we'll have it up forever after that because it keeps refreshing. And then we also have Wave of Conviction, which is just going to give us lightning exposure when we're attacking stuff. So often we're channeling, stuck in place, our cast when damage taken will go off. They'll get hit by the Wave of Conviction, and they'll take more damage from that burst. That's pretty much the gem setup. Like I said, you could use Call and Strike, you could use Zealotry. If you want to find a place to fit in like a Righteous Fire, if you weren't a fan of the shield charge setup, you could do like a Righteous Fire increased duration setup. You could always use Storm Burst instead of Divine Ire if you liked that more. More cast and damage taken setup stuff you could use. If you want to use Purifying Flame, it gives you an extra 4%, consecrated ground type thing going on. If you want to chill or freeze targets, you can use Cold Snap. If you want to destroy corpses, you can use Flesh Offering. So you can kind of tailor these cast and damage taken setups to what kind of content you're doing or what you want to achieve out of this cast and damage taken setup. Also Portal, if you want to use Portal, just so you don't have to buy Portal Scrolls, or you just run in maps really quickly for the Legion or whatnot, you can just drop Fortify, or you can drop Onslaught, and just do it that way. Otherwise, if you drop anything else, you don't really care about Flame Dash, you can put that in. But I like Flame Dash just to hop over like walls, and I like Shield Charge just to move at other points. But if you're okay with just one or the other, then you could save some links. But that's pretty much the links for this character. Let's also talk about the crit versus non-crit build as far as the tree goes. So about the gems. You wouldn't need precision for the non-crit build. You wouldn't need the diamond flask. You wouldn't need the corruption on the tactician. You wouldn't need the corruption on these gloves with the spells have 0.74% chance to crit. You could use some just regular gloves with like LE weakness on hit instead. That's one way to just do some damage without critting. But as far as the tree goes, you drop these 3 crit nodes. You would drop the spell crit here. You would drop the cast speed crit multi here. You drop the crit multi here, and you drop the spell damage nodes here, or the spell crit multi stuff here. You grab this wheel. This is good damage for non-crit builds. You're obviously going to grab Elemental Overload, and you can grab the cast speed here instead of the crit cast speed over here. Then I would say you can grab the lightning damage nodes up here just to get the leech and the lightning penetration. You could grab the minion damage nodes here, it just makes it easier to find some jewels, and the elemental damage nodes here. You can check POB to see like which nodes are the best, but it's really this cluster here, Forced Shaper, this one here, Heart of Thunder, and then I go for the elemental nodes, Divine Wrath with Divine Fury, and then the bottom part of Divine Judgment. So that's when I go non-crit, and that's what we did for most of this character's life. If you want to watch videos of crit versus non-crit, we have all of them up on the YouTube channel. We'll make a playlist with all of that, and we'll also put like links in the description. Right, so some like future stuff you could do with the build if you really want to min-max it and do some interesting things. I would say as the non-crit version, you can craft a shield similar to this one, where you get a roll of armor and energy shield. Either T2 or T1 would be ideal, and then also get a recover energy shield on block. And then you would multi-craft the percentage armor and energy shield, and then also armor and energy shield with life. And then we have a open suffix right here. We could craft a few different things. I just want to kind of show this. So our current shield is corrupted to have 5% chance to block spell damage. You could just craft that on here, or if you need resist attributes, but I would say the big ones would be the 5% chance to block spell damage, or the intellect and quality, or strength and quality, whatever you feel is best for you. You could craft that. What that would allow you to do is drop the Cerebrus Limb and craft like a wand that gives you more damage than the spell damage and cast speed here, while also letting you use a different shield. So you're kind of stuck into the Aegis Aura Cerebrus Limb combo. You could run this just instead of Aegis Aura. They're pretty similar, especially if I crafted the 5% chance to block spell damage. But as you see, I gain a pretty decent chunk of energy shield. One thing we do lose is this shield doesn't have the 30% chance to block. We could craft it on there, as you saw, and that would make it to where this enables this part to where we get the leech. But I wouldn't worry too much with the leech. You can always take this node here. If you're going non-crit, you could take the spell leech here, or the energy shield leech there, and you could also take the energy shield leech here if you need to for 1 point. That'd be more than enough to sustain. You could also look at getting energy shield or leech if you've killed recently. I don't really like it. I would say go for attacks and cast speed if you killed recently. I just value cast speed more on this kind of character. Also, the attack speed helps with just clear speed. Otherwise, if you're only doing bosses, you can get the flat lightning roll if you haven't killed recently, or the damage penetration if you haven't killed recently, if you're just looking to strictly boss. But I feel like all around, attack and cast speed is probably the best. But I'm going to say that's pretty much everything with the character. I think you could do the setup with really any skill. You would just take different damage nodes on the tree. I also messed around with Divine Ire Castle Channeling Wave of Conviction. You could do Storm Burst, Castle Channeling Wave of Conviction as well. You could swap to like a Purifying Flame build if you want to do that, but you'll have to convert to fire damage a different way. But anyway, the way the build is set up, I think you could make this work with almost any skill. And you would just be a tanky character. So if you really like, you know, some crit or non-crit based tanky battle mage type character, then this would be the build for you, and I would definitely recommend giving this build a try. But hey guys, if you guys have any questions or comments about the build, just let me know down in the comments. Like I said, I'll have all the links and everything in the description. I'll put the path of building for the crit and the non-crit version there as well. And I appreciate all you guys for watching. So if you enjoy this type of content, want to see more in the future, please hit me up with that subscribe. I also stream on Twitch every now and then. I'll put the link also in the description if you want to leave me a follow, support me further. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.